Hi guys, it's a rare nighttime live. So, I do these sometimes during the day. Here's one at night because I'm in my office right now. And that's my basement, by the way. And I thought I could do some. There was a lot of talk about emotional labor on my most recent post. Can always answer questions about that. It's my favorite thing to talk about. No, it's not. It's one of my favorite things to talk about, though. So you can ask me about that, or you could recommend any other topic that you'd like me to discuss in a podcast or a post. You guys should all be part of my secret group that's only $4.99 on Facebook. It's great people. We have great discussions, so that's always fun. And again, if you have stuff that you're interested in me talking about, you can always, certainly say hello, and you can ask me about anything that you're struggling with, relationship, career, parenting, etc. And of course, send your likes and your loves. That increases the number of people who see this, so that is good. And I see a few people watching, so definitely send your likes. And what else? I have a podcast coming out pretty much every day on the Dr. Psych Mom Show, and you guys should totally all be subscribing. Hi Ken, how are you? You guys should all be subscribed because you get 170 something extra episodes, which is great. What else? I will stay here in case anybody has a question that they'd like an answer to. But I don't know if this is a good time. I think this is more of a dinner time for many people, but we'll see. We'll see if anybody has any questions to ask. It's much, much more fun if you guys ask your questions. I did a podcast with Dad Starting Over, so that's out on YouTube on his page, and you guys can check that out if you're a fan of listening to me talk to Dad Starting Over, which some of you are. Some of you like that, so that is cool. Some of you come to me from Dad Starting Over. I'm going to do a podcast on emotional labor. I'm going to get that up ready. So, yeah, that's about that. I am going to have a Kindle book coming out soon. That's a compilation of some of my blog posts. And that may come out at a later date, but very soon, I think. Brad said, I came from DSO. Good, Brad. That's cool. I like when people come over from these collaborations. So you, Brad, and anybody else listening should check out Dad Starting Over's YouTube podcast with me, because that was fun to do. So I think it'll be fun for you to watch. 9 people watching, so say hi, guys. Say hello. Say hello. And, what was my most recent podcast episode? Oh, it was child, coworker, friend. It's a good way to think about whether you're being fair to your spouse. Would you act the same with a child, a coworker, or a friend? And many people treat their spouse much worse than they would treat a child, a coworker, or a friend. So that can be a useful paradigm for you, which I say is the CCF method, child, coworker, friend. So you can definitely do that. What else? Nothing else. So let's see if I get any questions late in the game here. Anything fun, any topics you'd like me to address, any requests, any likes, send your likes, send your loves, send your hearts, and even your frowny faces. I don't care, as long as they're reactions. That is cool. I'm going to post on Medium. I don't know if you guys are all following me on Medium. Some people like Medium. Some people don't like Medium. Some people are medium about Medium. Brad says, what time should a 10-year-old be going to bed? Well, I got a 10-year-old for another couple days, and he's in bed at 9. He's probably asleep. He goes upstairs for 9, and he's probably asleep by 9:45, 10. Wakes up around 7:30. They're supposed to be getting a lot of sleep, at this age. So what time's yours going to sleep? It's not good for them to get too little sleep, because then they're crabby, obviously. But it's, you can't put them to sleep at 7:30 anymore, unfortunately. Can't get the whole night, but I do like hanging out with him. And the older ones go in at the same time, but they read for longer. I have teenagers also. But what is bad for the marriage, not that you asked this, but when they are all up all the time, wandering around, using the microwave, like put a kibosh on that shit. Delay it as long as possible, like they should be reading in their room, out of sight, out of mind, and then you could go to sleep at a normal time, and you could also get couple time, Oh, you said 8 p.m., but you said something else, but fighting him daily. Yeah, that's because that's a little, especially for the summer, that's a little bit early. So so both you and your wife say 8 p.m., Brad? Because that is a little bit early, especially in the summer. It's like very light out. So I could see why he's mad at you. So maybe, why don't you give him a little bit more time? He's a good boy, right? He's a nice child. I'm going to advocate for your son, Brad. Mark says, what about a workshop on dirty talking? Well, yeah, I could run that one by Heather and tell her that that was a request. The problem is that, well, I mean, I don't know how you're going to do like 45 minutes on that. It's not exact. But maybe I'll talk to Heather about it. Brad says we don't limit during summer, just during school. Well, 8 is still a little early for him because he's, they're not going to be at the same kind of time. But maybe you could get it to 8:30. He's going to have more homework, etc. So, yeah, I don't know. That's just what I think. What time does he get up? Does he have to get up really early? Because then you're probably right. Does he have to get up like 6? If he has to get up at 6, then I can understand why you're doing it. But if he doesn't, then you probably want to let him go a little longer. Unless he's like, just really sleeps a lot. Some kids need a lot of sleep. Oh, I see. You say closer to 9, wife says 8:30. He gets up really early, 5:30. I see why your wife says that. Why does he get up so early? Does he fall right asleep at 8? Because you both commute to work. Yes. Poor little thing. All right, so he has to get up early. So then he has to go to sleep early. That's how it goes. But, I mean, he does have to go to sleep, like, kind of at the time of his peers, because that's important, too. So I'd say definitely, as he gets older, increase it a little bit. So in the winter, he's tired. It's dark. But, in the fall, when school starts, it's still light out. So maybe see how it goes, Some kids need more sleep than other kids. But 5:30 is early to get up for a little kid. So, it is what it is. Maybe you could move closer to, maybe you could telecommute. Maybe we could change the problem, change the frame. That's what I always like to do, change the frame. Maybe the kid's getting up too early. Maybe you could go to sleep later if he got up later, and maybe you could telecommute some days. That's a good idea, right, Brad? Brad and I are just going to have a real relaxed conversation about the intricacies of his schedule because nobody else is commenting at all. But if anybody else would like to comment, just to chime in on Brad's son or really anything, then feel free, guys. Feel free. Or else Brad and I could just keep on talking. Hold on, I got oh gosh, this woman is asking how to make, well, this is related to you, how to make time for sex when the kid goes to sleep later. That's probably your problem, Brad. Candace says, Candace jumped in. Does one parent leave later than the Candace is really helping. She's a team player. She's going to comment on your sleep situation with your kid. She says, does one parent leave later than the other and things could be changed out? See, me and Candace are going to solve this problem, man. Your kid is going to be sleeping till like 9 a.m. Going to go to sleep at midnight. Your whole life's going to be different. But yeah, I mean, I say think outside the box. That is early, Why do you have to leave at the same time, Brad? Do you work in the same place? Maybe we could I don't know. I mean, just bring it up in the group, Brad. I mean, we could really brainstorm the shit out of this. As is obvious right now, we could get behind any topic in the secret group, and that's why you guys should join the secret group, is because if you come to the secret group and you bring anything up, people will talk about it. It's like crazy. Like, people will say something and like nobody says anything, and then 5 minutes later I refresh and like 16 people commented on something like random, like about somebody's life. That's why I like the secret group. So you should definitely join the secret group. $4.99 a month, the best money you'll ever spend, according to literal group members, not just me. And it's fun in there, and there's smart people. And sometimes, like, I really get into a topic. I gave some lady like 4 book recommendations in like 1 minute yesterday, I think. Brian says, do you use nonverbal communication and statement analysis when counseling? Well, I don't know what either one of those is. I can assume, does that mean, do I look at people and like try to see what they're thinking and feeling? Yeah, so do you. And so does everybody. And statement analysis, does that just mean I'm analyzing what they say? Because I do that too. But from the capitalization, I feel that you are referring to something specific that I don't know about. So if the former, yes. If the latter, no. And there's 8 of you watching, so please send your likes. Are people sending likes to this thing? Because I can't see it on my end. Their use of certain words, yes, that's what therapy is. Like, of course. I mean, so like Brad here, he could have been like, oh, it's like so annoying, my son goes to sleep late. Or he could have been like, or early. Or, oh, it's great for him, my son goes to sleep early. And that's the frame that Brad would be thinking about his son's bedtime. And that usually corresponds to his frame about thinking about everything else. So the same guy that thinks positive about one thing and talks in a positive manner about one thing is going to think positively about other things, and was probably raised by positive parents that use positive statements. But if he uses negative, I'm not talking about you anymore, Brad, obviously this is just hypothetical. If he used negative, martyr-like, victim-like comments, then he probably learned those growing up. And if he talks about one thing like that, he's going to talk about lots of things like that, And so, obviously, I mean, people come into therapy and they're like, oh, my life sucks. It's like so terrible. So you think I'm just like, oh man, that sucks. Can't help you. Sounds beyond help. No, that's the way that person is framing their life. Because that's how they were taught to frame it. Somebody else could have all the exact same things in that guy's life, and they're like, oh, I'm so lucky. So the way that you communicate is a reflection of your deep internal landscape. How do you view the world? That manifests in your language. And that's the only way that I could see what somebody, I mean, sure, I could look at them, but the only way I can really get an eye into what their internal world is like is what do they say? And then whatever they said, sometimes I'll say in therapy, I'll say, who said that? Because somebody will lapse into kind of like a little different way of speaking, like they'll spill something and they'll be like, oh, stupid, who says that? Who said that to you? Who told you were stupid when you spilled something? Who said they were stupid when they spilled something? And now you're emulating that, so you could tell what somebody's upbringing was like just from talking to them, And what their upbringing was like is going to shape what they talk to themselves like, what they talk to their kids like, what they talk to their spouse like, and how they think about and frame everything around them. So that is therapy. So if that's what you mean, then that is therapy, and that's what I do. And if you guys watching think that's interesting and you wish that somebody was there to tell you about your internal landscape based on how you talk, then y'all should be in therapy. Brian says, as we are all a result of our caretakers. Correct. Yes. And people don't even realize that. They're like, oh no, not me. My past is, that was then, this is now. And all that stuff that happened to me didn't even impact me at all. And I'm like, oh, so what if what happened to you happened to your kid? And the person's like, oh my God, that would be terrible. I would never let that happen. My child would be devastated. We would need to get them into therapy right away. And I'm like, What about you? That happened to you. What are, you know? And so it could be a real eye-opener for people that minimize. I have a whole article on it. Do you minimize your own stressful upbringing while trying to save your children exactly from what you experienced, you know? Brian says, spot on. Thank you. Well, you know, this is what I do every day, so it's not a heavy lift. Brad says, it took me 40 years to realize it. Yes. And attachment styles. Yes, attachment styles is big. That also comes from your upbringing and just your personality too. Because I do have a podcast. Not all avoidant attachment is avoidant attachment. You know, there's just more avoidant people in the world, and there's just more sensitive people. And sometimes that could be mistaken for avoidant and preoccupied attachment, and sometimes it's not. People just naturally have different levels of how much they want to interact with other people, honestly, and how vulnerable they feel and how independent they feel, etc. But your attachment style does come from your caregivers. But everything is nature and nurture, of course, genetics and environment. And in general, you can just, when somebody talks to you, you know how they were talked to. And that's in romantic relationships, and that's everywhere. So, and I talk about this all the time on the Dr. Psych Mom Show, my podcast. So you guys should totally all be listening. It's on Spotify, Apple, Google, everywhere. Soon it'll be on YouTube. I just was told Google Podcast Manager's like ending or something. Yeah, so good questions, guys. Anybody have any other questions? 13 people watching, which is great. So, you know, any other interesting questions about therapy or anything else? Let's see. Oh, there's Brad. Brad, I'm just going to wait till I look over because I know I'm not going to get another one. So I'm savoring the moments until I'm looking. Let's see. One more. All right. How did someone go about... Oh, this is easy. How did someone go about being tested for ADHD as an adult? Well, Brad, you feel... All right. Either way, there's no like adult ADHD. It's only an adult that got diagnosed finally with the ADHD they always had, you know? And so when you're diagnosed with ADHD, they go back to childhood and they say, how did you act in these situations and whatever. But if they can't do that because you don't have any more teachers or parents or anybody who will report because you're an adult, then they ask how you are now. But ADHD doesn't just manifest. Thank you, Brad, for trying to make conversation. No, for real. And so there's a couple ways to get your ADHD diagnosis. The first is you literally go to your GP and you're like, I think I have ADHD. Then they basically read you the DSM criteria and they're like, yeah or no, which you could Google yourself, ADHD DSM criteria. And the DSM is a book that has all the disorders. But the point is you can do that, or else you can pay if you have money waiting around. You can pay for a neuropsych evaluation where they do this whole thing and you even do a computer test to see how fast you pick up on certain things, your response time, and all sorts of stuff. And they give you a nice report. And if you just want to do that because you, for shits and giggles, you can. But unless you're in a country, and some people tell me in their country you can't get ADHD medication or anything without some full evaluation. But in our country, you could just go to your GP or a psychiatrist. The psychiatrist is not going to do a full evaluation. They're just going to assess. They're going to ask you the questions that are basically in the DSM. They're going to take a full history, and then you're going to leave with a diagnosis. Or a psychologist, like myself, can also assess you. And that's from the DSM criteria. So all you really have to do is Google the DSM criteria. But thanks, Brad. Jacques says, I'm preoccupied attachment style. I'm working on it. Would be useful to know what a securely attached style looks like. So those are the people that aren't really clingy and jealous or detached. They're just kind of living their life and they're happy with their partner. And I have podcasts on what does a healthy marriage look like? What does a happy marriage look like at midlife? I have other stuff on, like just, they're just like the people that grew up in happy families. Like, it's like so weird. They're just happy, those people. So that's what everybody aspires to, is be the people where your kids just grew up in a happy family. But They're not jealous. They don't think somebody's going to leave them. They don't go around pushing people away either. They have a healthy interdependence with their partner. You can read that, interdependence as a relationship goal. That's one of my posts on Dr. Psych Mom. And they have a healthy give and take. They accept love. They give love. They're not perfect. They may work on stuff. They may have depression or anxiety or anything. It's not like they're a perfect human being, but they're not uncomfortable around closeness. They trust people because they grew up in a trusting atmosphere. That's why, for real. They had a loving relationship with at least one parent, and usually the marriage they saw was all right, and then they end up securely attached. And if you didn't grow up seeing a marriage that was all right, and if your home was just stressful and difficult, then don't beat yourself up about not being securely attached, because how would you be? You didn't learn it. It's like, how would you learn a language that you were never taught? You were never taught the language of secure attachment. You were taught to be hypervigilant and jealous and clingy, because otherwise your caregiver will leave. That's how you felt. So now you do it now. So therapy can really help you. Bill says, once a child is diagnosed, it will never go away and it influences job application your whole life. So this episode of Mythbusters, that is not true. There is no job. Like, are you talking about like security clearance? That's the one possibility where that could be correct. So I used to work at a VA. I used to live in Annapolis. Like, I used to work with, and I still work with some ex-military guys. I used to work with a lot of current military guys. Some people can't get certain diagnoses, or else they can't be in the military anymore, or they can't be in the CIA, or whatever their, security clearance is. Otherwise, except for those jobs, no other job ever asks about that, and that isn't a thing. So you can definitely get your ADHD diagnosis, unless your specific job, and they'll make that really clear at the outset, you cannot have an ADHD diagnosis for it. And I think this is going to change in the military, too, because most guys in the military have ADHD. I work with a lot of guys. Who's going to be doing that? Who's that brave? Who's that sensation seeking? If not a guy with ADHD. It's just like a lot of ER physicians have ADHD. People who are sensation and stimulation seekers frequently have ADHD. So, at some point, this is going to be considered okay to say. All right, great questions, guys. Thanks very much. Any other questions? I can stay for a few more minutes. This is a participation-heavy live. I guess everybody's a little more uninhibited at night, which is great, because during the day, a lot of times people don't ask anything. So. Is there a type of attachment style more related to ADHD? No. ADHD is different. ADHD is a disorder. Attachment style is an attachment style. So these things are completely orthogonal constructs, right? You have your attachment style that's based on your caregiver. Now, the way that it could influence, interestingly, so let's say you're really, a difficult kid because you have ADHD. It's possible that could influence, and actually research has shown that it does influence the quality of your relationship with a parent. Parents are people, as we all know who are listening, because we're all parents. So if a kid does have ADHD, they're more difficult to deal with. The parent may need to set more boundaries. The parent may yell more. And that's not ideal, but life is not ideal. So we're talking about the world that is, not the world that should be, right? And so in that case, then yes, it will impact attachment style if the caregiver, there's so many other variables, right? So like if the caregiver themselves has ADHD, right? They could either get along with you better, or you could be at loggerheads. Like, there's just all this goodness of fit between parent and child, and people don't ever really talk about that. They talk about it a bit in literature, of course, but like in common parlance, we're really not allowed, societally to be like, oh, some parents and kids are just a better fit than other parents and kids. But some people would be really good parenting a kid with ADHD. Some people aren't, and so if it's like a depressed mother and a kid with hyperactive ADHD, she's going to be subconsciously trying to get away from that kid a lot because he's just overwhelming her so much. And so then that child with ADHD would likely have a higher risk of having a preoccupied or an avoidant attachment style based upon how the mother interacts with him, which is related to the ADHD, right? So there's a lot of variables, but there is no known main effect from the literature that I know which relates ADHD to attachment style. But who knows? More stuff's coming out all the time. And if you ever want to really know, if you're not just making conversation, then you can Google it and put the word research after it, and that's all I do. I don't have any secret, this direct line to, somebody telling me what research came out. I Google search it myself. And then you look for peer-reviewed publications and you look at the data. And you know what? There may well be articles on that, which would be quite interesting. And you could post it if you find them. Candace said, our 16-year-old girl over the weekend said she didn't think my husband's very affectionate. I brought up we kiss, hug, and cuddle every day. She said he's not always touching me or being all over me. A little concerning. Maybe she thinks if someone is not always wanting to be touchy-feely, this is how she associates love and affection. Yeah, well, I mean, what's happening? There's a lot there. There's a lot there, Candace. I mean, she may have meant that. She may have been saying that because she was alluding to something else. She may be picking up on some tension. She is at the age where you start to have romantic relationships, and really focusing on that and having sex and whatever, or getting ready to be at that stage. So she may be much more alert to things like that. Generally, though, I think she's curious about some aspect of your marriage, and that's how she brought it up. So you could have a different kind of conversation where you said, it was interesting where when you said that the other day, I'm just wondering if there's anything on your mind, or she also, maybe basically asking what normal is, which is something that teenagers do a lot. So you could, if you're happy with the amount of physical attention and affection in your house, you could be sure to share that. That's just how we are, me and Dad, and we're not too touchy-feely in public, but in private we are. You could say something like that. If it's something that you actually don't like, that he's not touchy-feely, you could say, yeah, not everybody has everything. I love Dad, but, he's not, super touchy-feely guy. I could probably be more touchy-feely, but, in marriage you compromise. There's, a lot of ways to use that for an interesting spin-off of a conversation about marriage in a more mature way, which a 16-year-old would be ready to hear. Not anything specific about your sex life, obviously. Maybe not obviously, but don't do that. But yeah, she's obviously interested, and we can make use of that as an opportunity for learning. Brian here says people could have multiple attachment styles. No. Within different relationships they can, though. So yes, in that regard. But with your caregiver, you tend to have one, unless the caregiver changes a lot. So let's say your mother is happy, and then when you're 10 years old, she loses a baby, let's say. So she becomes very depressed. And then you're always trying to kind of connect to her and you can't. Well, then you could develop a preoccupied or an avoidant attachment style with her at that juncture. Within relationships, sometimes people who are avoidant or preoccupied switch to either avoidant or preoccupied the other one in another relationship. They only know one way to do it, pursue or distance her. So they it's like whatever the other person does, they do the other one. But where they don't go is secure. What people don't really do is vacillate between secure and one of the insecure ones, So if you're secure, you tend to stay secure. If you're happily married, the truth is you could be happily married to a lot of people. And if you're unhappily married, you'd probably be unhappily married to a lot of people without doing your own internal work. So yes, people's attachment styles can change with different partners. All right, well, this was an interesting one. I'll probably post it on YouTube because there was a lot of interesting content. And thank y'all for participating. Please do follow me every single place where you can follow me, which is everywhere. And except social media sites that are too young and hip for me to know about them yet. And I'll talk to y'all soon. Have a great night, guys. Bye-bye.